Hey, with you evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
Daria was drowning. Her hands did not obey and only raked the water. Her legs were pouring lead, and then she promptly went to the bottom. The water mercilessly swallowed her up in a breath of air, but there was only murky, absorbent, cotton-greenish water around. Daria shuddered with horror and woke up. A dream is just a scary dream. Her heart was still pounding with terrible force. A nasty, sticky sweat appeared on her forehead. But it had to be such a dream. Daria took a full breath of air and lost her eyes. Dawn was breaking outside the window. A yellowing tree branch insistently knocked on the window. The first Sunday in September, and Daria is off today. Great. Daria's mood lifted at the thought. She would spend the whole day with her son. Carefully, she turned to the wall. Her little boy has been sleeping for 3 years now, and every evening he slaps his bare feet from his room with the words, "Mommy, can I have a sneak peek?" Knows that Daria will fall asleep earlier and can sleep with Mommy until morning. Jacob. Daria was raising him alone when she told her lover she was pregnant. He acted all indignant. "Daria, you're a doctor. Don't you know what to do?" No, Daria knew and understood, so she turned around and walked away from him. And Will wasn't going to catch up. He didn't need it all. Will was interested in nightclubs, parties, racing around the night city in a cool car bought by his parents. He generally went easy and carefree in this life. There was always an influential dad with a fat wallet and a mom at the red acquaintances, and Daria worked in the district clinic until her maternity. Then Jacob was born. Her parents lived far from the city, so she had to rely only on herself. When Ilyusha was 1.5 years old, she joined an ambulance. It paid better. It was possible, if anything, to change shifts. She rarely went out at night, but there was a kind neighbor, Betty. The old lady was happy to look after the baby. Her grandchildren are grown up now, but she had more than enough warmth in her heart. The son of a bitch had taken a nap, and Mommy opened her eyes. The child circled the thin arms around Daria's neck. She pressed her son tightly against her, kissed him on the top of his head. "Well, my sunshine, shall we get up?" The baby immediately jumped up and started jumping on the couch. "Let's go to the park to feed the ducks." "Oh yes." Daria promised him a walk to the park yesterday. There were such wonderful jokes floating around. For a second, the memory of the nightmare came back. The murky water immediately brushed it away. Forget it. It was just a dream. We ate breakfast, got ready, and went to the park. We walked by the pond until lunchtime, and when we got back and sat down to eat, the station called. "Daria, your shiftman has a fever. Marry him now. Where can I go?" Daria sighed sadly. Betty was happy to sit with the club, but the boy was getting cranky. He and his mom were going out tonight too, after all. Just kidding, Sonny. Daria kissed the baby's nose. "You'll just play a little bit, and I'll come back, and we'll go feed the ducklings again, and they won't fly away." "Really?" asked Jacob, wiping tears from his cheeks with his fist. "What are you?" "Not yet," laughed Daria. "All right, you go, 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 go." Betty waved her hand and closed the door behind Daria. With a light heart, the woman ran to work. Betty was good with the club, and he loved her. Everything will be fine, Daria thought. The shift was remarkably quiet, and at 9 p.m. Betty called. "Daria." The old lady was crying into the phone. "I didn't keep an eye on Jacob. What happened?" The woman's eyes went black. "The locksmith came to see me. The faucet in the bathroom leaked. I left the door open while we were talking to the bathroom fitter. Jacob must have opened the door and left without his jacket. I went around the house on the landing, looked around, no sign of him. We went to the park by the pond." Daria's breath caught, and the morning nightmare came back to her mind. The water was murky, and so was this one. Nobody saw him there. "Betty's been spotted." "Daria, I'm sorry, Betty. I'll be right there." Daria pulled herself together. At work, when they heard about Daria's trouble, they immediately let the woman go, except this one. An available crew dropped her off at a colleague's house and helped her look all over the neighborhood, or was nowhere to be found. There was nothing the police could do on a hot trail either. Like he's gone into the water, muddy water. The nightmare was coming true. Daria seemed to be drowning in her grief. A week passed, then a month. Jacob was never found at the police station. Dryly told the child would be reported missing. If we have any information, we'll let you know immediately." Daria realized that no one would ever look for her son again. Betty, feeling guilty, tried to communicate less with her. Daria didn't want any contact with her either. No matter how you look at it, it was the neighbor. Although without malice, the mother came to Daria. She found on whom to leave her children on an old grandmother who serves herself. "What were you thinking?" Daria didn't answer her. "How can you explain to your mother that she is alone in a huge city without any support? Doesn't she understand?" It's true that mother cooled down a bit with her father afterwards. I blame her too. I should have taken you home right away. Then she suggested Daria to go home now. There your pain will subside and everything will get better. The mother sincerely wished her daughter well. She felt sorry for her grandson, but what could she do? "No," Mom firmly told Daria, "I'm staying here. I know my baby's alive and I'll find him anyway." "Do you even believe that?" the mother exclaimed in frustration. Volunteers searched the police, all corners. Oops, a balloon. Even the bottom of this unfortunate pond is nowhere to be found. "Jacob, we must accept it and forget. Forget your own child." "Mom, but how can you say that? Go away, go away. It's better that you and father never cared much about me." What am I feeling? What am I living? My heart's been ripped out. Do you understand that? That evening, mother and daughter parted badly. The mother was offended that her daughter accused her of callousness. Daria was determined to find her son and not listen to anyone. 4 years passed. For 4 long years, Jacob was not found. Daria still worked in the ER. She was a good doctor. And to be honest, now work was the meaning of her life. Daria didn't even think about her personal life. Many familiar men tried to hit on her, but always received a firm refusal. No relationship for her. As stone became no feelings, one job. One day, dispatcher Cindy took a strange call. A thin child's voice sobbed into the receiver. "Grandma's sick." She dialed your number and collapsed. "I don't know what to do." Cindy asked for the address. The child memorized, said the street house 5. And already the ambulance raced into the private sector in search of tiny streets on all sides, run-down high-rises. The driver could hardly figure out how to get to the right house. It stood at the very bank of a small rivulet. A boy of about 7 met them in the yard. Daria, grabbing a suitcase with medicines, rushed towards him and froze like a stumbling block. Jacob is the same blonde and huge blue eyes, only grown up. "What's your name?" In a trembling voice, Daria asked. Eugene uttered the boy, and the intonation to the woman seemed familiar. "Eugene." Daria stroked the child's head confusedly. "Auntie, you will save Granny." The boy's voice brought the woman back to reality. "Yes, yes." Walking through the dark room, there was an old woman lying on the floor. She was breathing heavily, conscious. Daria examined the patient. "Well, heart attack. Looks like urgent hospitalization." While the paramedic and the driver fiddled with the stretcher. Daria was looking at the boy the whole time. The doctor spoke weakly to the patient. "I can't go to the hospital. Who will I leave Eugene for? He is an orphan, an orphan." What she heard hurt Daria. Would not her motherly heart deceive her? "I met him 4 years ago on the street," my grandmother said. "It was fall, and he was small, without a jacket, shaking, crying from the cold. She said he was lost, and he reminded me so much of my Jacob. I had a son, drowned as a child in that Dan River." "And what are you doing dead in your voice?" Daria asked. "I took the boy and raised him for years. Never told anyone about him. And told the neighbors that my daughter brought her grandson from another city, so the child is not listed in any documents." Daria was surprised. "That's the way it is. I realized I did wrong, but I couldn't give my boy away." Then the woman felt very bad, loading the patient into the car. The ambulance sped off. Daria and Peter tried to help the woman. They put a slide in the cab with the driver. "Uncle." The boy asked the driver, looking into the cabin, "And my grandmother will be saved." "They will save the boy," Kevin soothed, although he realized that the case was bad. And so it is. They didn't bring her back. The patient died on the way to the hospital after all the necessary actions. In this case, Daria returned to the substation with Igor, and she told him that the grandmother would be in the hospital for a very long time, and no one would be allowed to visit her. "Daria, who is this?" The dispatcher Ira was surprised. "And you look carefully." Friend, trembling from their own guess's voice, answered Daria. "He looks like Jacob, only older, but he has grown up in 4 years." Daria said absent-mindedly, not believing that she had found her own blood. Then she looked at the boy, pressed him tightly against her, and burst into tears. "My darling, you are mine. How long have I been looking for you? Auntie, don't you understand?" Looked at her little boy. "I'm your mommy. Sonny, you just forgot." And Daria began to kiss his eyebrows. Nose, cheeks, everything so dear. "Darius," Cindy whispered in her ear, "take your time. Maybe it's a mistake. You can't fool a mother's heart." Daria laughed. From that day on, life had taken on new colors. She simply poured the flood of unspent 4 years of motherly love on her son. Daria decided to let him be Eugene. The boy was already used to that name. Bought him all the best things. Took him to the zoo, the water park, went to the circus. Neighbor Betty even got a few years younger when she saw Daria with her son. "Daria, I can die easy now, knowing that Jacob has been found. I prayed for him. Oh God, Betty." "Live another 100 years, smiled Daria. "I'm good too. I knew I didn't mean it, but I couldn't forgive. It's all in the past now. Let's forget all the bad things." From that day on, the roommates began to warm up to each other again. One day the neighbors had a visitor, grandson Adam and his 7-year-old daughter. Adam had recently transferred from out of town. He was in the police force. His wife had recently died of cancer, so that his daughter could get over the pain of losing her mom, so he moved. Betty was happy to have guests and invited a neighbor and her son. The grandmother had her own calculation, and it paid off. Daria, who left after her son returned, was nice and friendly. Adam was pleasant, a new acquaintance. Pretty soon they started dating. Both Eugene and Molly enjoyed playing with each other. Everything fell into place. It was only Cindy's friend Daria who wouldn't let up, so she's gonna take a DNA test. I realize that Eugene looks like Jacob, but that's not proof. I understand if it's a mole or a scar. You're a medical professional, and you should understand. Cindy, I get it. He's my son. And DNA doesn't cost a fortune. Why would I waste that kind of money? I'd rather spend it on my son. Daria was pretty sure. My aunt works at a clinic like that. My friend wouldn't stop. She'll do it on the sly for free. All right. Just to put your mind at ease, I'll do it. The day after the DNA conversation, the DNA result was done. 10 days later, Daria did. Every day after work, she rushed to her son's house in the evenings, and Adam Happiness came with her daughter. And then Cindy's aunt called. "The result is ready. Come tomorrow morning," to get rid of her annoying friend. Daria ran into the lab before work, and the result shocked her. Eugene. Not her Jacob, not her son, but some other boy. Once lost in the big city, and her little boy is still out there, whether he's alive. Black thoughts, one worse than the other, came into her head. Daria called a coworker and asked her to cover for her. She had no strength to go to work. She sat in her apartment like a stone until evening. It was time to go pick her up from daycare. Daria, through sheer strength, went to pick up the child. When her mother saw her on the kindergarten grounds, Eugene rushed from the playground to the woman, ran up and clung tightly with his whole body. "My son." Tears glistened in the corners of Daria's eyes. "Mommy, you are crying, and I just miss you very much," said the woman, and kissed the baby on the top of his head. In the evening, Adam came in, leaving the children with Betty. They went outside. Daria told him everything, how she was going to be Eugene, and of course she would not give up, and she would straighten out the documents and formalize them as she should. But nothing is known about her Jacob. Adam was silent for a long time, thinking about something. Then he said, "I promise you that I will find out everything about your son. But what to do if it will be the terrible truth?" Daria was ready for anything. There was nothing worse than the unknown. For the next week, Adam was at work around the clock. His daughter stayed with Daria. Nothing reminded him of their last conversation, but it was Daria's son that Adam was searching for. Long and painstakingly, he studied the files of all the babies lost, traveled to several orphanages. A conversation with a colleague gave him an idea. Nowadays, underage beggars are at a premium. A gypsy baron Adam knew in his hometown owed him a favor. He had once saved his son in a shootout. The policeman went boldly to him. The Baron listened, remained silent for a long time. Then he called someone and spoke for a long time in Gypsy speak in the neighborhood where your woman lives. 4 years ago, there were some, he said. Slowly, without looking Adam in the eye, they found a boy in the park and took him for themselves. He's alive, Adam asked with a sinking heart, but what will happen to him? At the railroad stations, begging along with ours. They should be here by now, and the Baron said the name of the station was near the sea. I'll take the boy. Adam looked resolutely at the Baron, and of course, I told them not to make a fuss, give the child. And so Adam was already rushing at top speed to the specified place, and gypsy women with a lot of children were walking along the platform. And he noticed at once a bright and blue-eyed one. He stood out among the other grimy kids, gypsies from before, and with a slide surprisingly similar. The gypsy women gave the boy away without a word. Only the oldest of them poked her head in displeasure. Jacob was already on his way to the car with Adam. "Uncle, where are you taking me?" shyly asked the boy. "To Mommy, little boy, to Mommy." Adam said briefly. When the doorbell rang, Daria's heart jumped for some reason. She opened the door and saw Adam and the blonde-haired baby in rags. The woman sank to her knees without strength. Jacob then cradled the baby tightly, and angrily with bitter tears. At this time, Eugene looked confusedly at the boy and the woman. "Mommy, what about me, Sonny? You are mine too. Come here. This is your brother." Daria was bringing both boys to her house. And in the morning, Daria and the club went to make an examination. Why? To calm the mother's heart. In due time, the answer came back yes, it's Daria's child. While waiting for the DNA result, the woman was a little nervous, but there was not much time to think. The two boys had become friends and were having war games and hide and seek. And Molly kept up with them. Daria took a vacation, and she suddenly felt a strange feeling. At one point, I became a mom of many children. It's so wonderful, although responsible. It was clear, September weather, the day they picked up the results of the examination. The kids were running ahead. Adam and Daria were walking a little behind. Suddenly, Jacob turned around and asked Mommy, "Are the jokes still flying? Let's go to the park to feed them." Daria laughed. Her little boy remembered his favorite place. Now it will be everyone's favorite in their large and friendly family, and no dark forces will defeat them.